Julius Caesar, one of the greatest commanders of antiquity, the champion of the Roman people, the conqueror of Gaul, a Roman governor, consul, and dictator. He systematically moved up the political ladder, soon becoming the most powerful man in Rome. How then did a man so influential and loved end up on the floor of the Senate with 23 stab wounds in his body? This is the story of Gaius Julius Caesar. He was born on July 12, 100 BCE in Rome, Italy, to a patrician family who claimed descent from the legendary Trojan hero Aeneas. His mother Aurelia was from an influential family, while his father was the governor of the Asian province. His family was not very influential in politics at the time of his birth, although his aunt Julia did marry Gaius Marius, who was one of the most important leaders of the late Roman Republic. Tragedy struck a 16-year-old Caesar when his father passed away and he became the head of his family. Although not much else was recorded about Caesar's childhood, it is known that Caesar formed strategic alliances and friendships with the Roman nobility. Caesar would then marry Cornelia, the daughter of Lucius Cornelius Cinna, a political ally of Marius. After Sulla's rise to power and the exile of Marius, Sulla stripped Caesar of his wealth, his priesthood, and ordered Caesar to divorce Cornelia. The young man refused and went into hiding. He would only return to Rome 6 years later in 78 BCE. Caesar is one of the most decorated and accomplished military generals of all time. With his conquest of Gaul and his incursion into Britannia, there is much to discuss when it comes to his military prowess and achievements. Caesar would often use a political pretense in order to justify his conquest. In this way, his political and military career are closely intertwined. This forces us to analyze both his political and military activities in the same scope of reference. Let's start at the beginning. After leaving Rome, Caesar joined the army and served under Marcus Minucius Thermus in Sicilia, in the province of Asia Minor. He would win the civic crown, the second highest military honor, for his part in the siege of Mytilene in 81 BCE. In 78 BCE, after Sulla's death, Caesar, back in Rome, turned to legal advocacy as a criminal lawyer and became known for his exceptional oratory. This would unequivocally place him in the Reform faction and have him act as a voice for the people. On his way to Rhodes to learn oratory, Sicilian pirates in the Aegean Sea captured a 25-year-old Caesar and held him for ransom. Caesar acted superior to his captors, although the pirates took this as a joke. When Caesar heard the pirates demanded a ransom of 20 talents, he was insulted and demanded they raise the ransom to 50 talents. This, along with the fact that the young Caesar told the pirates he would hunt them down once released, displays the amount of self-confidence and pride Caesar held, even at a young age. He would capture and kill the pirates after his release. The following year, in 74 BCE, he added to his military reputation when he assembled a private army in order to combat the king of Pontus, Mithridates VI, who had declared war on the Roman Empire. This display of proactivity by Caesar would turn out to be one of the defining characteristics of his military career. Between 70 and 68 BCE, he would form an alliance with Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, also known as Pompey. He would be elected a quaestor in Hispania Ulterior. Later in this period, his wife Cornelia and his aunt Julia would pass away. He would give a famous oratorical performance at his aunt's funeral, praising her and her family. This was Caesar's way of claiming inheritance to Marius' wealth. It is also said that in Hispania, after seeing a statue of Alexander the Great, Caesar, now 32, would realize that at the same age, Alexander had conquered most of the known world, while Caesar had achieved nothing of great significance. This sparked a fire in Caesar's heart and would fuel an ambition that would shake the very foundation of Rome. Caesar married Pompeia, the granddaughter of Sulla. After he returned from his term in Hispania, Caesar got elected Aedile. He would gain the people's support by hosting great festivities. Caesar was elected Pontifex Maximus, or High Priest, in 63 BCE. He became Praetor the next year. This made the opposing faction very nervous, as Caesar held tremendous support from the majority of the population. The year after, in 61 BCE, Caesar would acquire the position of governor of Hispania, the same place he was quaestor several years earlier. This marked a pivotal point in the nature of Caesar's career. His earlier political posts were handled normally, just as any other aspiring politician. From now on, Caesar's actions would take on a more criminal aspect, as he started to disregard the senatorial powers in favor of his own ambition. He would start having to hold a political or military position in order to maintain his immunity from prosecution. He conducted expeditions in Portugal and gained loot and territory. These conquests would foreshadow his Gallic Wars. Caesar would return to Rome with the ability to enter the city under triumph or run for the consular elections, although he could not do both. Caesar chose the consulship in order to maintain his legal immunity. In 59 BCE, Caesar secured the consulship and formed the first triumvirate between himself, Marcus Licinius Crassus, the richest man in Rome, and his old ally Pompey. Caesar would also marry Calpurnia. One of his first ratified laws was the redistribution of land in Italy to poor citizens and Pompey's soldiers. Caesar was also given the governorship of Cisalpine Gaul, Illyricum, and Transalpine Gaul, along with the command of 4 legions for the years of 58 to 54 BCE. In 58 BCE, after his term as consul was over, a tribe named the Helvetii was migrating towards Roman territory. Caesar, ever so proactive, went to block the tribe, forcing them to move north. Caesar then followed them to protect his Gallic allies who requested aid. After several weeks, Caesar was running low on food and took his 6 legions to the Gallic outpost of Bibracte to resupply, with the Helvetii shadowing Caesar. The battle commenced near the town, resulting in the defeat and surrender of the Helvetii. Shortly after that encounter, Caesar was informed that a German king, Ariovistus, had been invited over the Rhine. The king had attacked the Aedui, one of Rome's allies, and was bringing thousands of Germans into Gaul. This was unacceptable because Ariovistus was encroaching on Rome's sphere of influence. Negotiations broke down, after which Caesar decisively beat the Germans, forcing them to flee. The Roman army would winter in Gaul, while Caesar tended to his duties in the Republic. He returned to his army in the spring of 57 BCE after hearing of an anti-Roman coalition formed by the Belgae. This was just another excuse he needed to conquer all of Gaul. He moved swiftly, surprising the Remi, who then betrayed the coalition, providing Caesar intel on the Belgic army. The remaining Belgae would then meet Caesar on the Exana River. However, a fight would not commence, and the Belgians would return home. But not all the Belgians were ready to give up. The Nervi formed another coalition and met the Romans on the Cibis River. The battle ended in a Roman victory, with Caesar claiming only 500 Belgae survived of the original 60,000. In 56 BCE, the Triumvirate of Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey met in Lucca, Italy. They decided that Pompey and Crassus would run for consul and would then grant Caesar an extension on his governorship till 49 BCE, preserving his legal immunity until he could run for consul again. Caesar then got word that a sea trading tribe, the Veneti, had arrested some Roman diplomats. For this minor transgression, Caesar burned down their villages, destroyed their fleet, and either killed or enslaved their entire population. In 55 BCE, Caesar had plans to sail over the English Channel to Britannia. But before he could do this, he heard of a massive tribe of Germanic peoples crossing the Rhine. Caesar quickly repelled this migration, slaughtering a large number of Germans. Caesar then built a bridge over the Rhine and crossed into Germania, becoming the first Roman general to do so. After this, Caesar led an expedition into Britain, under the pretense that the Britons had been supplying Caesar's Gallic enemies. Although he would not achieve much in Britain, the Roman consuls Pompey and Crassus declared 20 days of Thanksgiving for Caesar. The next year, in 54 BCE, Caesar would again lead an expedition to Britain. And this time, he subdued the resistance led by Cassivellaunus, making his territory a Roman tributary and placing a client king in charge. After a revolt in northern Gaul annihilated one legion and severely crippled another in the winter of 54 to 53 BCE, Caesar took 2 legions and put down the revolt. He would then build another bridge over the Rhine and destroy some Germanic villages. By 52 BCE, Most tribes in Gaul had united under Vercingetorix. They formed a united Gallic force and started harassing Romans and Roman allies in Gaul. As reports started piling up, Caesar realized another revolt was occurring, so he marched into central Gaul. Vercingetorix knew that he could not win a pitched battle against the Romans, so he adopted a scorched earth strategy in order to deprive the Romans of food and supplies. Caesar then took the stronghold of Avaricum by siege, using a ramp and siege towers to scale the walls. Afterwards, Caesar marched on the city of Gergovia, where Vercingetorix would win a decisive victory. Both armies regrouped and met at the city of Alesia. After an elaborate battle involving wall building and a second Gallic army, Vercingetorix surrendered. Gaul was annexed into Rome. The Gallic Wars were over. In 53 BCE, at the Battle of Carrhae in Syria, Crassus was killed in a humiliating defeat to the Parthians. Caesar's daughter Julia, the wife of Pompey, also died. Pompey then sided with the Senate against Caesar. The Triumvirate was officially dead. The Senate demanded Caesar hand over his 10 legions and to lay down his command. He refused. He couldn't afford to get tried as a war criminal and was left with no choice but to rebel. Caesar would cross the Rubicon in 49 BCE. This marked the beginning of Caesar's civil war. He swiftly took control of Italy while Pompey and most of the Senate fled to Greece. He was made dictator and would rebuild the Senate with his own supporters in order to legitimize his rule. Caesar then crossed the Adriatic Sea. After an exhausting battle at Dyrrhachium, Pompey would force Caesar's withdrawal. They would meet again at the Battle of Pharsalus, where Caesar would prevail. Pompey then fled to Egypt, but would be killed upon arrival. The civil war was effectively over. Caesar then sailed to Egypt, and after a months-long siege, Cleopatra was placed on the throne. He then dealt with an uprising by King Pharnaces II, where he would utter the famous words, "I came, I saw, I conquered." He then briefly returned to Rome, after which he headed to North Africa to quell the rest of the resistance, headed by Cato. He would be given 4 triumphs for his conquests in Gaul, Egypt, Asia Minor, and North Africa. Caesar made many reforms, which included debt restructuring, the reconstruction of Corinth and Carthage, the disbanding of his 9 oldest legions, a new system of taxation, the implementation of the Julian calendar, many public works like rebuilding the Senate House, the speaking platform, and the courthouse, along with constructing the Forum of Caesar. He increased the size of the bureaucracy. He gave citizenship to people outside of Italy, which was unprecedented. He also redistributed land to the poor. These legislations made Caesar immensely popular with the citizens of Rome, but they alienated the political class. Caesar was given the title of dictator in 49, 48, 46, and finally 44 BCE when he was made dictator for life. He was also given the consulship for 5 years. The dictator met his end at the hands of his own people. A conspiracy led by Marcus Junius Brutus, Gaius Cassius Longinus, and Decimus Brutus Albinus that involved over 60 Roman senators came to fruition on the Ides of March in 44 BCE. During a Senate meeting, Caesar was cornered and stabbed 23 times. Gaius Julius Caesar was dead.